Next speaker for 3 minutes is Louise Bourse.
Thank you. The resolution urges the adoption of a directive for the balanced representation of men and women on boards. Now, this is a piece of EU legislation that allows sanctions, such as the dissolution of a company, just because it hasn't succeeded in reaching the arbitrary target imposed by the European Union. You don't fight discrimination with discrimination. Bringing in quotas is demeaning for women, the women who have worked hard and made it to the top of their professions. It shouldn't matter what gender you are, what your ethnic background or religion is. If you're the best qualified person for that job, you should get it. But with the instigation of these policies, people could look around the boardroom and question whether a colleague is the best person for the job, or did they simply obtain their position because their gender ticked the right boxes on the EU checklist. Now, paragraph 56 calls for the EU Commission to create best practice models of sex and relationship education for young people. Paragraph 60 urges the Commission to implement sex education programmes in schools and ensure counselling and access to contraception. It is outrageous, absolutely outrageous, that the EU seeks to interfere with member states' education systems, especially with regard to sex education. And to top things off, in the explanatory statement, you even say who should be doing the housework. If I can quote directly from it, men will have to devote more time to the housework. Now, what kind of organisation interferes to this extent in the private lives of people, their marriages, their partnerships? It's up to adults in the privacy of their own homes to decide who does what. It's not the place of any government, and it certainly is not the place of EU bureaucrats to decide who does and doesn't do the dishes. In 1975, the UK voted to join a Europe of free trade and friendship, not a European Union of political control and social engineering. This is yet another reason to vote no in the upcoming UK referendum. Let us regain our freedom and independence from these meddling EU bureaucrats. Yeah.
On behalf of GUE/NGL, I'll give the floor to Mrs. Björk. President, Commissioners, I'd like to thank colleagues in the committee for the good cooperation. For the GUE/NGL, gender equality is essential for building the kind of society we want to live in. A fair society based on democracy and gender equality, essentially, because otherwise it's not a real democracy. We've had hundreds, if not thousands, of years of patriarchy, and that's shaped our society. And the possibility of gender equality shouldn't remain a dream. Women must insist on their rights: right to work, right to inherit, right to contraceptives and so forth. So I'd like to thank everybody who's worked on this report, but we've got to keep working at it, and one has to wonder at the kind of resistance that we see. Now, not everyone is a feminist, but everyone is, it would seem, committed to developing a fairer society where everybody's got the same rights and obligations. And in future, we must work hard to ensure that women can enjoy economic independence. We must campaign against threat or threats of violence, and we campaign for a society where girls have more freedom. And we want a society where women know they've got the right to their own body and their own sexuality. And that's something that's got to happen out there in reality, not just on paper. Women don't want to live in a Europe of old men. We want progress to be made. And that's why this strategy is most welcome. The whole question of women on boards, what we have is not enough. Tomorrow we're adopting a report which is probably not enough, but it does move forward. there is a holistic approach, and therefore we must support it. And now, colleague, this isn't just about subsidiarity, about whether you're in favour of women's rights or do you want to keep going with the patriarchal model. Tomorrow we'll be voting in favour of the resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, colleague. Thank you. You just quote feminism. You were just talking about feminism then, and discrimination. I just would like your opinion, please. If a gentleman, a male MEP, had stood up in this Parliament and said that men do not want to live in a Europe of old women, what would the feminists have said amongst us? I'm sure there'd be uproar. But that is just what you have said, and I personally find that equally offensive. I think discrimination has to work both ways, and as a feminist you can't stand there and make statements like that without then having the contrary backing it up. So to my mind, to say that women don't want to live in a Europe full of old men is just the same as a man standing up and saying a man doesn't want to live in a Europe full of old women.
Thank you. In an equal society, I wouldn't dream of calling anyone anything. But in this society, I have been fighting for women's and girls' equal rights long enough, and I have met a lot of resistance, and believe me, that resistance is mainly from older men. And in this chamber, it's even more true. So I'm not taking it anymore. I'm not having it anymore. And I can name something for what it is. We see a lot of male resistance to gender equality in this room, and it has to stop. I want equality also in this chamber, by the way. Quotas tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We accept, I understand, that women and men have equal skills and talent. Unfortunately, when I am looking at TV, there is a program, Extreme Sports, and there are no women. In all the extreme sports, there are no women. I think you should demand that there will be at least 40% of women jumping on the motorcycles and so on. And moreover, there is a list of 100 best chess players. We should demand that at least 40% of the best chess players should be women. And of course, if necessary, we should change the rules of chess. Because
could you please ask a question?
To have at least 40% of women on the list of best chess players. Thank you very much. What do you think about it?
Frau Kollegin.
Madam.
I have to admit that I did not really understand what your question was, but however, if you try to refer to women maybe being less talented in chess than men, then I simply have to say that you are not right.
Thank you. We talk about equality post-2015. I take you back to a time a young girl grew up during the Second World War in England. She was from a lower class background than most of the rulers we've ever had in England. She grew up to win a record number of elections in our country. She defeated the hard left in our country. She defeated the Soviet Union and won the Cold War. She went on to fight for liberty and freedom, and at every step of the way, Margaret Thatcher never once had an EU directive or a helping hand or a quota. So in the spirit of freedom that Mrs Thatcher put forward, when you speak of gender quotas for business, sex education and PC indoctrination in schools, and the amount of housework that men should do being dictated to from here, well, as the lady would say, no, no, no.